Jeff,
Yeah, that's me.
Happy New Year. Dana,
Happy New
Happy New
Year.
Year.
Happy New Year.
You said, Dana, you wanted to bring out the picnic basket, unload it, bring out all the goodies right away.
Right away. So, what do we got in the basket today, Ron?
Well, I guess you texted me about aerial flying in churches,
Yes.
acrobats. I mean, that was kind of, to be honest, unexpected. I wasn't expecting. Oh, did you hear that? You hear the dog? Um, it was. Kind of, do you hear the dogs? Those aren't my dogs, by the way.
The ants. We want the picnic, not the ants, Ron.
Yeah, no, we want the we want all the goodies out on the table right away.
Yes.
The drinks, the meat, the desserts. So you text me earlier and said that you'd been talking about aerial flying in churches.
Yes, and this this came to our attention because, well, we all went to the mega church together years and years and years ago, and the pastor of that church went to start or to help another pretty big church. And I guess Jeff likes to just see what's going on over there because they do a lot of video, video on their website. And he, I think, was watching their holiday kind of a spectacular show. And that's when I believe it came to his attention that they were using, I guess they're called aerialists. So it's where they have those like silk ropes suspended from the ceiling. And the woman, I've never seen a man do it, but the woman will wrap herself up and basically be hovering above everybody doing her aerialist performance. So that is, I guess, it's not just that church. I guess this is a thing around the country among different churches.
Is it all one denomination or is it widespread? What are we talking about? I didn't really get too much into it because it was kind of a last minute thing.
Yeah, well, I have been browsing online and I watched some other big churches performance there. So I there's this website that follows and basically criticizes churches for the most part for false teaching. I think some of their criticism is often very good. So the reason I saw this church, I don't know where it is. It's on the East Coast or something, but um, their Christmas show was being criticized because they basically sang "Let It Go" as part of their worship set. You know, the Elsa song,
Yes.
like
Yes.
without changing it or anything, just kind of putting it in there. So to somebody who's very conscientious, I think, you know, they'd have a problem with this song that celebrates basically letting go of morality, right? No right,
Yeah.
no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. But in that show too, I think they had an aerialist, or it was something that they've used in their church too. So I was like, oh yeah, it's not just one church doing it, but it's not a denomination. I mean, the church we were focused on isn't it's a non-denominational church. So when I saw the first, I guess I've been surprised and saddened and a little stunned by some things that churches do, especially when they're promoting, like when they're doing it as entertainment. It makes me sad and I'll be surprised. But I really was surprised. I had all those feelings when I saw the first aerialist thinking, oh my gosh, they're really doing this? Like, what are they thinking? Now, I want to know, Ron, for you to watch it, was that your impression?
Well, the reason why I asked what denomination, because you will typically see that kind of stuff come from like the Pentecostal movement, right? Like snake kind of handling, slaying in the spirit, a number of other things. I remember, do you remember way back when, go see those guys? I think you guys did too, but there was a pretty good sized group of us that were at the churches that we were attending. And we went to another church in the community, and it was the guys that used to rip phone books, and like break bricks. Do you remember those guys? You know what I'm talking about?
Well, but that's more like they're doing a show to then get you interested and then they preach the gospel. Like having a skateboarder do skateboard tricks. Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, kind of. But do you know who I'm talking about? Like these guys would come in, they were like really like muscular guys. You could tell they were, bodybuilders as well, but they would come in and they would literally like tear phone books, they would break bricks, and they would do all these, it's kind of like stunts, yeah, like, in that category, but it was a show, and then they would, preach the gospel along with it. Yes.
Yeah, well, because they do those things at like high schools so that they can do their motivational speech at the high school, right? And then they do the gospel speech after hours sometimes because like they can't do that during school
Yeah,
hours.
yeah. So that's and I again, the first I heard of this was tonight. So I don't know much about it, and I don't know if is it a regular practice? Is it just a one-time thing? Is it a traveling situation? I mean, what?
Yeah. Yeah, no, this isn't like that. This is like so my husband's actually, so well
Excuse me,
a
you mean
relative,
your partner?
yeah, yeah, so a relative of ours goes to the church we used to go to, and when they do like their Easter service, I guess last time they had an aerialist. It's just part of worship. It's not like a special show that's advertised to attract
Praise.
people to come see the aerialist. This is more like someone doing they view it as like using their gifts during the praise time.
Yeah, so it's a regular, scheduled practice. It's not.
Yeah, it's like special, like having a violinist play the violin.
Yeah, but again, they don't do it on a regular. Like you're not going to the church every Sunday and you see this aerialist like doing her stunts, right? Every service, or is it? I don't know.
I mean, I think the way they're using it, it could be, but it typically is, I think, from what I saw, it's like the special performances. But I did read about another church where he was saying like they wanted to have it as a regular thing because he viewed it as the quote's really bad too. I don't have the exact quote, but something like, like God's people shouldn't have to go to the circus to exercise their gifts. Like we should basically, they should be able to do it during worship service.
Yeah, yeah. So they they have a performer, I guess. Is that I don't know
Can
much
you see
about
the
it.
video, Ron?
I literally, well, I
Look at the
saw part.
video. No,
I
look right
saw
now though.
are you watching? Let's see. Okay. Yeah.
You see,
Yeah.
this is let me see. There she is. She's climbing up.
Is that a pole? Oh, okay, never mind. It looks like a pole. I thought we had a pole dancer.
Yeah,
Hey,
well,
you gotta
so
exercise your gifts.
and so this is my so I know like I purposely like shelter myself quite a bit. Like we don't watch a lot of um entertainment media. We're just not pursuing a lot of entertainment or pop culture kind of things. So, but yeah, my thought is, wow, in this is not a good idea because it does look like a pole dancer, and she's very attractive, and um I just I just feel badly for the young men in the audience who probably find it very distracting. But am I just an old prude?
Well, no, I no those questions are good questions. I mean, those questions should be asked. Um, so with that said, your thought is, I mean, when you looked at it and you started looking into it and the discussions that you and your partner have had, right? Um, your, if I'm not mistaken, your thoughts on it are it's a distraction um, for a number of different reasons, but more specifically, what you're pointing out is the more like erotic um,
Well,
nature
yeah,
of
I mean
it.
that's when I look, I think more like pole dancer, not like uh like I brought up violinist, like having someone play the violin. I could see that more as being a legitimate form of exercising your gifts. But again, am I just is my brain stuck in the muck? When I see that, I think pole dancer.
Yeah. So no, I don't think your brain's stuck in the muck. I think it's a not a matter of preference, but I think a conviction, right? Because I think if it was a matter of preference, your feelings on it would be a little bit different. But you have a conviction um, about it, and I think I mean, obviously, I thought initially it was a pole dancer when I saw the clip.
Okay, okay.
uh,
Okay, so what's going on here then? Where like to me that's like the common to me that would be yeah, I don't really think my brain is much more, seedy or any, I think this is like the common sense response, like what's going on here?
yeah,
Um
yeah.
like so how is there such a disconnect? Um
Well, if
like what it just seems crazy to me. It seems
well,
crazy. Like
I
what are you thinking?
I would say this about that and a number of other things, but if you didn't tell me what it was and I didn't have any commentary or context behind that clip and I just simply watched it, maybe without even any audio or maybe with even audio, I don't know, but it's just assume you could hear the audio, but I just watched it. I wouldn't know, I really wouldn't know what it was other than some kind of performance. I wouldn't link it to a church, that's for sure, just because of the entertainment aspect of it. And when I think of church services, I don't really think of entertainment.
Boring.
Um,
You think boring?
I don't know, not boring. I don't find um, I don't find discussions in the Bible boring. I don't find sermons boring. I find them intriguing. I like listening to them. And I know a lot of people do. I'm not the only one. Um, some people call that boring. Some people don't enjoy that. It seems like getting on the subject of boring, it seems like the motivation behind having that kind of performance would to change the service up so it wouldn't be boring. Is that, I mean, if you had to guess, would that be it?
Well, I mean, maybe we have to get someone in leadership on this show to really get out what they're thinking.
Right.
Like, I think from when I did read another pastor's, he was like defending it, and it seemed like kind of like, I mean, he was I think for him this is integrating the arts into worship, but I mean, I don't know if there's just some willful naivety on their part to not recognize what a normal person would would associate with that type of performance. I think they thought, oh yeah, this is great art.
Yeah.
She's talented.
Yeah.
She's talented, and so yeah, maybe is that just a preference thing, or I mean, I see something like this, and it just it saddens me. I don't know if I'd say it's blasphemy, but it just seems uh, crazy. Do you hear me, dog?
I searched aerialist.
You broke up at the end a little bit, but I got what
I
you were
searched
saying.
aerialist, and I was going to show you the third link that came up, but one of the problems is all the links appear to be either they're inappropriate or pornographic.
Are they inappropriate? Are they
So I
really
clicked
bad?
on the third one because it said Cirque Aerialist promo video, and I won't show it. And the reason I won't show it is it's showing it's Hot Bartenders LA, I guess. Hot Bartenders LA, and it's people doing the same kind of show, but they're wearing leotards instead, so they're not wearing as poofy of clothing, but they're doing similar things. But they're at a bar.
Is it not a church?
No,
I don't know.
no.
They don't have any down shots, so maybe if they panned downward, maybe there'd be a
Yes.
bunch of church people
Yeah. So I mean, are people like?
singing.
Is this delusion? Are we
It's
witnessing a
strong delusion.
delusion? Like,
Yeah, so
um,
it's really funny because I searched aerialist because I wanted to look it up, I guess, and I put a video up right now. I'm sorry, I'm watching this video. It's very similar to the it's very similar to the one that I just showed you from the church, except the only difference is these girls are wearing leotards that like bathing suit type leotards, so you can see their legs basically, but
So
they're still doing the same things.
yeah,
if
no. And so
And
I
it's
watch and
obvious
I
that
just like,
this is for um for a bar to have women exploiting women basically and their bodies. If you want to look, depends on your views on these things. People would say they're not exploited, they're enjoying themselves and they're empowering themselves by letting people stare at them. I guess someone might have that perspective, but I think anytime um a woman is just simply dancing around so people can look at her, it's one of the obvious lower forms of life. It's like the idea that I would want any of my children to be a spectacle on a stage, male or female, so that people could look at them and lust after them. Like that's a great achievement, right?
so
Uh, anyway,
well, no, that brings up a lot of stuff. Um, but I mean, before we move on, I do want to ask. So when you were talking about it, you were discussing it between each other. Um, do you think do you think it's an entertainment thing where they're trying to draw a crowd, they're trying to bring attention? What are they defending? What did the pastor say, Dana? What's the rationale behind why they're doing it?
Well, I mean, we don't have these particular pastors in dialogue with us right now. But what Jeff had said, because again, we were part of the same church, a long time ago, and I'm really grateful for all the help that that particular pastor gave us, like gave me, just in the sermons and teachings, like so. So I really affirm that, he really helped me through his ministry.
Yeah.
But what Jeff and I had, one of the major reasons we chose to not continue attending the church, even when maybe there was a different pastor already, but we did choose to leave because one of the things was because of the use of entertainment in the church services, and where it just seems so inappropriate to us. And this was even when the entertainment was, like some of the pastors and singers would like do a secular song and do a song and dance, and they would like tie it into the sermon, but yeah, it just didn't seem fitting for church. I mean, I guess we were getting more convinced that the church meeting was supposed to be for primarily for God and for believers to praise God and to be encouraged to continue following God. So when we'd see these song and dance routines that were just entertainment, and it just seemed it was very off-putting for us. And maybe we were thinking about our children eventually getting older. I don't know. I just know that that was a negative for us. So when we saw what was happening now, it just seemed like Jeff had been saying, that was already there years ago. They've just continued on, intertwining entertainment with the church service. And I guess now, looking toward what's popular in the Las Vegas style entertainment, to then to bring that in too. And I think in the past, I think the pastor would defend, like, remember when they would use secular songs, but then they would change them a little bit to make them a praise song.
Yeah, they call them like saved songs.
I don't know, but yeah, and I think it wasn't just because, oh, we like the tune and we really want to change the song. I think they thought, or they stated, that it was like a technique to help non-believers feel more comfortable, because they would come in and say, oh yeah, they're playing that popular song. But and while I would say, like, I was a non-believer, I wasn't a Christian when I was visiting the church before, but the things that helped me the most had nothing to do with the entertainment or the song style. Like, I didn't even like a lot of the songs I was listening to at the time. They weren't being used in the praise time. And so I just really don't think you need to do any of that stuff to make people drawn in to, and to help people to change their lives. It's all just unnecessary. And then I think with some of the choices, if they're doing inappropriate, what I would say is inappropriate entertainment, then it seems like a really bad idea.
Would you say that doing those kinds of things and drawing that kind of attention, that audience, is detrimental to like the church environment? I mean, so for instance, if you're doing a Bible study, this would go back to even just having the discussions that we've had and the many times that we've said that it's difficult to have a conversation about things. So I know just from observation experience that see, a Bible study or church that was kind of focused on just going through the Bible and sticking to that as a discussion piece. And you would see the opposite of that. Well, not the opposite, but they would incorporate the Bible into the service. But they would also bring in all this stuff, like the things that you were talking about, the songs and the entertainment aspect of it. And they would draw a larger crowd. I think, no doubt, that's an effective tool to use, right? I mean, it does draw a crowd at the end of the day. Now, whether drawing a crowd should be the goal or not, that's a different thing. But I mean, would you agree that drawing the crowd, it does actually draw a crowd?
I mean, maybe. I know for me that was not part of it.
No, not
So
for
I
you,
mean,
not for
but
you
yeah, I
personally.
don't know. I mean, would someone say, I hear there's this aerialist at the church. Like, I want to go see that.
This
I
is
guess
Ariel
there's
Silk at Community Christian Church.
Well, yeah, I'm not
yeah,
quite under.
like so maybe so someone would say, let's go, hey, free show. Like
I
I
don't
think it
know.
I think with this particular one, it just seems so it seems like a really misguided choice. And I actually, as I started Googling this topic, one of the first things that came up for me, because I searched it with the term church, was like a Reddit forum. And it was an atheist forum. And some atheist was like, oh my gosh, I just went to my family's old church. I can't believe they had an aerialist. She was hot. And like the whole forum was joking and laughing, like basically making fun of like this um this church that had to do something to draw people in, because obviously the the myth of Jesus wasn't good enough, and they were mocking it like, oh wow, you're resorting to that type of entertainment. And they were also commenting on the attractiveness of the female, because I think the guy posted a video or something. And so it maybe, whether it draws a crowd, it definitely can draw attention that I think isn't good attention.
Like the comment that you mentioned, the guy said, or the girl, so whoever it was, the individual said that the myth of Jesus isn't good enough, so they had to bring in entertainment. So that almost seems like at the end of the day, I don't know that the churches are thinking in those terms, but at the end of the day, right? I mean, the entertainment aspect of it does draw a crowd, and it seems like that is almost like the purpose of it, to bring in entertainment and to draw a crowd. I mean, do you agree with that? I mean,
Yeah,
you have a
so
lot of experience with it, as I do, so you've seen it a lot, and I have too.
yeah. So I remember, that the strategy would be stated like, you do things to draw people to come, and then they get to like bait and switch. Like then they'll hear the gospel.
Yeah,
And well, I could
yeah,
see like say someone, I mean, I think maybe that's used in a lot of forms. I think it's going too far, I guess. I could think of this church that we had visited for a long time, and they would go out to Skid Row like every other weekend, and they all or like Hollywood Boulevard, and they all stand together and they sing gospel songs, and that draws a crowd, right? So they're all for drawing a crowd. and they had gospel pamphlets, and they would talk to people who would talk to them. And I mean, sure, so they are using their singing to draw a crowd. I think they're also legitimately praising God. And that technique, it does I don't have a that doesn't give me the same feelings as where it's like a really big show. Like, you know, you're really doing this amazing song and dance to secular music, or you're bringing in a lion or whatever, or bringing in the aerialists. Like that seems like
Hey, they did
that
bring in a
type of drawing
lion.
the crowd isn't it's just going, I guess, too far, in my
They did bring
opinion.
in a lion.
Well, yeah, I've seen stuff like that too. I've seen pretty elaborate shows, not in person, other than the guys I was talking about earlier, which I wish I could remember. I'm sure you could look it up, Jeff. The Hour of Power. I don't know. I don't remember what it was,
Bash
but
Brothers or something.
so, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was cool. I mean, it was entertaining. It was fun to watch. It was fun to see these guys tearing phone books and breaking bricks and
I
um
think I did see this, and like, I mean, when I was I feel like so maybe I did see this with you or some of our friends, like, but I would laugh though because it's so corny too. Like it's a
well, no,
corny, like,
it
yeah, rip the phone book.
it is very corny, and so is watching like somebody do, I'm sure, tightrope kind of stuff at church. It's a I don't know, the atmosphere doesn't, to me, doesn't lend a helping hand to that kind of situation. But I could be wrong, but I don't know. I'm just not understanding who's embracing it.
I'm showing multiple churches, one
Yeah.
after
Yeah,
another,
so
where people
I
are
guess
performing.
I
And this actually
guess
looks dangerous. That's another aspect of it. I mean, I don't know what exactly is being talked about here, but the one aspect is it's interesting that it's dangerous too. Part of this is that they could fall and die. And so um, that aspect is nothing to ignore, I don't think. I think the fact that these people are part of the circus act is that they are climbing up ropes and doing spins and stuff. And so, um, and that it's dangerous. So, can you imagine that she does her little spin and loses her footing and falls to her death?
so.
And
Do you think this long term, short term, whatever, this has some detrimental effect on the church overall or on
well,
people?
I haven't said much. First of all, somebody shared this with me, if I recall. So I wasn't checking in on the church that we had attended, but I think somebody shared it with me because they thought it was funny.
I think
And
our
I,
friend.
yeah. Some a group of us used to go to that church, and so someone thought it was funny. Um, but I look at it almost more as what is the word, a barometer, or a symptom of a larger problem. As Dana already pointed out, it begins at this idea that we're gonna bring people in. So, with the church that we used to attend, that this began at the first video we saw. Um, we know from our experience there that there is a fundamental belief that you've got to bring people to the church, and then when they get to the church, they'll get the message, and when they get the message, they'll get converted, and that is one of the main pushes. Get people here. I know that when I was attending there was a time that if you brought somebody, I think there was a chance you'd get a snowboard um, for one of the youth groups, and there's this big push to bring people, and in and of itself, I
You
don't
brought
have a
me, Jeff.
that's true, yes. So in and of itself, I don't have a problem with the idea of bringing people to church. That's not a problem. But you begin to see those things like bring somebody, get a snowboard, and then the shows and the entertainment. And some of it is less problematic than others, like the saved songs, as you were talking about earlier. Maybe that's genuinely them just putting Christian lyrics to a good tune. And I don't necessarily know that that's inevitably a problem, but it's the nature of what's going on that could be, and that is where you are putting the getting people in the doors as your primary goal. And perhaps that's what's going on here. I don't know, but I do know that I'm looking it up now, and there are multiple churches that have women swinging around on ropes as part of the show. And obviously, the question you're asking, Ron, is, does this bring people in? Maybe it does, and then it leads back to this question of fundamental problem here. What exactly are we doing here? What is the gospel, and who is God, and how is God working, and so forth? I think begin to be the fundamental questions behind all this. And
Right.
is the church just trying to get people in the doors? Is that really all we're doing, or is there something more going on here? Like God's actually doing something, or is it everything?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Just get them in the doors. Is that okay? Like at all costs?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know from experience in having discussions with people. I've heard a lot of I've heard a lot of people kind of complain when those types of things happen. Um, they don't go on some full on revolt against the leadership of the church, but I have talked to quite a few people, and certain things are presented as opportunities to share the gospel, whether it be entertainment or concerts. And I've heard a lot of people say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why aren't we just teaching the Bible? Why do we have to try to bring in entertainment? And it seems like, I don't know why, but it seems like the leadership oftentimes kind of ignores those things, and proceeds forward with um, these entertainment aspects of trying to draw people in. I've seen that. I've seen a lot, and not in this particular um, situation where you've got pole dancers, but a lot of other things. Whether it be turning, they call secular songs, right, into save songs, where you're changing the lyrics and taking a very popular song and doing that. And so the idea is to have entertainment. But that does seem to be overall the motivation. I can't think of anything else that would motivate, you know, a church leadership to do these kind of things, other than to bring in a crowd, which I'm assuming, as you stated, Jeff, that they're typically trying to do that to get them in the door, and then they're going to give them the message, and hopefully give them the message, right, they're going to become saved, right? Is that accurate?
Seems to
Yeah,
be.
I guess so. And I think though with this particular form of entertainment, um, it's just so, to me, such a glaring problem because, like, if the idea is get them in the door, get them to hear the message, and then they'll want to live this Christian life, like, from talking with my husband and talking with several other men who became Christian, a big part of um, their Christian, the changes that were made in their lives is that they tried to follow Christ's teachings about not looking upon a woman with lust. And I heard from many of them that they would have a problem with, like, it was a real challenge for them to try to maintain this sense of purity and They told me how they couldn't even look at the women who would sing up on stage for the worship songs. Hello. If they were wearing like jeans or kind of low cut shirts, like they would purposely look away so that they wouldn't be distracted by impure thoughts while singing. So it's just bizarro to me to have what looks like a pole dancing woman as part of the worship service, because a man who would want to follow Christ's teachings would probably have a hard time with a, a lady in tight clothing moving all around like that. It
Yeah,
just seems
so
like it's the thing that you're using to hook people is what you probably, if you were thinking things through, you'd want them to at least have a healthy caution about or completely reject as a form of entertainment. So that's like the irony, I guess, if we're going to call it a pole dancer. Like,
well, yeah,
don't use a pole dancer in church to attract people to hear a message that's going to tell them to not look at pole dancers.
But I think I think I like that. But I think it drives into kind of a deeper discussion, and that is, is that form of, if they want to call it worship, they can call it worship or entertainment in the church. Is that one of those things? You hear this a lot. You hear people throw around the term in the church community, heresy, right? False gospel, work of the enemy, all kinds of stuff when it comes to that thing. And I'm sure if we were to browse the comments, there would be plenty of those things. Plenty of people saying this is a false gospel. This is, the work of the enemy. Would you agree with any of those statements? Would you say that this goes in that realm, and that this is a false gospel? Would you tell somebody to go to that church? Would you recommend that they don't go to that church? Would you separate yourself from that kind of thing? Where does this ultimately go? How does this ultimately be handled? Because I assume, in most situations, if someone was asking you, in sincerity, whether they should go to that church and go check it out, and what your thoughts are, and do you think it's it's of God and all that stuff, what would you say?
Gosh, I'm having a hard time with figuring out what to do, or maybe not a hard time. But with church in general, like, I've been a lot of different places, and even when, like I just shared, like I thought the entertainment aspect, when it was a lot more innocent, was a problem way back when. But I also acknowledge that I got a lot of help from that church. Like, that was my first exposure to really trying to live by the Bible, in the context of this church that did all these kind of crazy things now, that I would think are crazy. Or even like, I'm a little concerned because I know some of these things that they're doing that are very entertaining, they're paying for them with tithes, that they're telling people that they have to donate to the church in order to be doing right. And that's, to me, very fearful. I think if you're telling people that this is, they have to give you money because you're doing God's work with it, and then you're going to go hire a pole dancer, like, I think that's very shaky ground, and I'm concerned. But again, I had a mixed experience, right? I had a lot of good. And every place we've been, there's been a lot of good, even though I also think there's, when I look at like the Bible, I think I've seen leadership who are choosing to do the opposite of what the Bible says at times. So like, where do you go? Like right now, like the last week, 2 weeks ago, it's mostly me, but I'm pleading with Jeff to drive, 30 minutes away so we could go to this thrift store church that meets in a thrift store where it's just simple. It's like they play some praise songs. People had a few testimonies, and the pastor read through a chapter, I think, of the Bible and just made some comments as he went along. And there was no show, and I loved it. The pastor, he's fine, but he's not like this amazing speaker. He didn't have this amazing sermon with all these illustrations, and he didn't make me laugh so hard that I cried. It wasn't polished, but it was very, to me, heartfelt. And he's just, trying to encourage us to apply the words of the Bible. And then I think we prayed after. And it was so simple. And to me, it really matches up with the things you see in the Bible that we're supposed to do. And it's not a show. And I'm totally done with a show. I think I said that to Jeff. Like, I don't need a show. I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't want a show. Now, where am I going to, if someone were to ask me, oh, is this a good church? It's like, well, what do I say? Like, I think, yeah, I mean, you can get help in some ways, and in other ways, I think there's some monstrously problematic things going on there. Like, we've been in churches where we did not give any tithes. Like, we didn't give money, and I didn't want to give them money because I didn't think that the denomination was doing. They were proclaiming some very anti-biblical things. I gave money somewhere else. So I've had this like 1 foot in, 1 foot out mentality, because like I want to go to church. I think it's good to go. Like, I don't want to just be by myself, like meet in our living room by ourselves. And I think I have something to learn, right, from others. But it is a hard place. Like, I think that we're in a weird place with current Christian norms. I think within the American church, there's a lot of problems. It's really cool we have the Bible. It's really cool we can read it. But then I also think when you really start to read it, then you look at what's being done and you think, that doesn't make any sense. I can't see the New Testament church advocating for like getting the gladiators to go do a battle so that then people would hear the message, like, and to do that as part of their meetings.
When you read something like test the spirits, does that resonate with this conversation? I mean, does that fit into this? What do you think about a passage like that, test the spirits?
Yeah, I kind of always want to keep myself in check. Like, I'll see a problem and I think, or like say a Bible teacher, or like the churches we've been part of, and I still want to give him like the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, well, maybe I'm not seeing something here, or maybe, it's really hard for me to feel confident to say, because you're wrong in this area, I completely reject you, and I'm not going to have any, I don't know, like, for anything further to do with you. That's hard. Like, even with the church, when we left it, like the mega church with the entertainment, we still, like, years later, I still wanted, I guess because there is a lack of really good preaching. and I knew the mega church had times where there was better preaching there, I still wanted my children to go there to listen, because it is so hard. There's just not, I guess it's hard to find the whole package. And like when, with the example of the thrift store church, to me, the whole package isn't that glamorous of a package. It's just like, don't do crazy stuff. Don't demand that people give you money and then spend it in crazy ways. And like, pray and just follow the scriptures, like try to closely follow. And it doesn't seem like that's really common, sadly.
So
If it was common, I wouldn't feel like we had to drive 30 miles to go find it.
Well, and without naming names or even having to point out particular denominations or sects, would you say, are there places that you would say that no, you should not attend that, you should stay away from that, that is false, that is problematic, and it's more detrimental than it is good? There might be some good things, but you need to steer clear of that. And more specifically, when it comes to the church.
Oh, DJ Ron just joined this call. Yeah, I mean, gosh, because so part of this package with the entertainment, right? Oh, you left the call. Part of the package, which you're familiar with, right, is that there's often this really big building, right, and this big, like a lot of staff and this big expensive operation. Like they're taking in millions of dollars a year. So like, gosh, like I wouldn't, like I've just been listening to these teachings where, David Berceau, he's a really good teacher, and he goes into like what the early church did and really shows like it's very consistent with just taking the New Testament literally. And but by doing that, though, it really obviously points out a lot of problems that are real, like common themes today. And like I was just listening about non-accumulation, like not accumulating worldly wealth, basically having the mentality of like selling the things you have and giving them to the poor, being really basic in the way you live. And if you have extra money, you're supposed to do good things with it, like clothe the naked, give people food, support orphans and widows, like, and that's really supposed to be what we're supposed to use our money for, like our extra money. So like living really simple and being really careful about your possessions, because like the rich, it's hard for the rich to inherit the kingdom of God and all this stuff. So then when I think about that, and that seems like a pretty major theme in Jesus's teaching, and then I think, well, there's this church that they don't do that. Like they're creating a very lavish structure, and it's really expensive to make those sound systems sound so good, and the lights and the smoke and all these things actually cost money. And so I just think, like, yeah, I mean, maybe I should be more concerned about that aspect, right? Where if someone asked me, is that a good place to go? I'd say like, no, like, look at what they're doing. That's like totally kind of like the opposite of homeless Jesus. Like Jesus had lots of times of being homeless. Like, do you think he would do that?
Yeah, so you would typically say the mega church, and not always, because you indicated that there was some good that even you experienced it, but I think the church that you would attend or had attended would fall into that category of like the mega church, right? Pretty large group of people. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
again, like I really think I became a Christian there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so I don't, that phrase, like you don't speak against God's anointed.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I need to think.
So but
I mean, it'd be hard to say, wow, all these people are false teachers.
yeah,
Like,
but do you
because
but do,
are we just human too? Like, I'm human and I've done a lot of things wrong. Like,
right.
and even as a Christian, like, I'd look back and say, oh, I wouldn't do that today.
But do
So
you
is that
but
part of it? Like, because they're in leadership. And so you kind of see their life and their choices magnified, you know, like, and
but
where you would think, oh, well, I made mistakes too. Is one
yeah.
like, right? Francis Chan left his mega church, right? So
Yeah.
eventually leaders even say, I was wrong, because they're human and they're still growing. And maybe they're also being influenced by other model, or like that's a model, right? The mega church is a model. You're viewed
Yeah.
as more successful if you get more people in, and you need them to pay money because that that property isn't going to build itself.
Right.
So gosh,
Right.
like I don't know what, like, yeah, nobody asked me anyway, right? So nobody.
Well, I
Well,
What
did.
well,
data should I go here?
well, I mean, what maybe Jeff can answer this, but what do you think about the false teacher aspect of this? I mean, I've heard
Ooh,
I've,
ooh, ooh.
in the community, in the church community, I've heard many times, people label certain individuals or denominations or teachings as false teachings or false teachers. Would you say that you see those things, that you actually do see false teachers and false movements and things that are deceptive?
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Do I get to answer?
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm
Now,
waiting for you.
you had said earlier, what do you think about testing the spirits? And so I think it's worth reading the passage you're referring to. So that's
Yeah,
out of John, First John, chapter 4. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world.
right, right. So stopping, pausing right there in the context of my question, um, do you see those things? Are you witnessing these false teachers? And again, I'm not asking you to necessarily say names unless you want to, but um, do you think those things exist? And can you adamantly say yes? And these are the kind of things that I would consider false teaching
Well,
and false teachers.
well, first of all, I think stopping there is good because it we have to. The hard thing for gracious Dana uh, and myself, I think too, is this passage teaching the fact that there are false teachers, that there are spirits that you have to test. There's a spirit behind things, as a pastor I talked to once said, that there's a spirit behind things. And so this idea that you can test them, it, it it's it's sad to think that you can have false prophets and false teachers and a false spirit. Going on with the passage, skipping ahead to verse 4, it says, You are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. They are of the world, therefore they speak as of the world, and the world hears them. We are of God. He who knows God hears us. He who is not of God does not hear us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. The only problem is John's not around anymore.
Yeah.
And
You know,
and and so with that said, um, I get back to my question. Regardless if John's around or not around, would you say that you can identify and say adamantly that yeah, these guys are false teachers, or this movement is false teachers. Again, I'm not asking for names, but I'm asking, do you think that that's true? And do you see that
So
stuff?
there's so you said gracious Dana, and I maybe this is a character flaw, but I don't normally, or I don't think I at all say that they're, that like I don't say it like that, like that's a false teacher. But whenever when I'm in a church service or listen to something on the radio or online, I am constantly listening with a very critical ear. And I often, um, pick out things that I think, oh no, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's like I'll think of a contradictory verse. So I'm practicing this. I'm not a very open listener in many ways, and I just do that. So I guess I'm listening to these teachers often, not assuming that they're always speaking the truth. But why is it that I don't say that's a false teacher and never listen again? Maybe that's something I need to think more about. Because if I was more consistent, like why am I listening to this person? If I'm very readily saying and believing that they are teaching things that aren't true, and not like crazy things, but just like with basic Bible knowledge, I think they're wrong.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
willing to go in front of millions of people like you're doing now and share all this stuff.
But then I say, well, they're right in these things, right? You know? Um, but let me think. But in the few times we've gone to the church in LA, what I've appreciated is um he doesn't say too much that's not just right there in the text. And it's a very simple. So maybe to not be a false teacher, you just probably don't need to like add much commentary. Just read the
Well,
Bible and make a few maybe applications, but like maybe these teachers are just trying to do too much. Like make some grand explanation and whatever.
yeah, yeah. Jeff, what are your thoughts on my question?
Your question? I don't remember your question. What was it?
Regarding false teachers and being able to identify false teachers and adamantly say like, no, I would avoid, that individual or that teaching because that's false teaching. That's not good.
I struggle with this. There's a passage it says in the same book, the previous chapter, 3:7, it says, little children, let no one deceive you. He who practices righteousness is righteous, just as he is righteous. He who sins is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. And then it goes on to say, whoever has been born of God does not sin, for his seed remains in him, and he cannot sin because he has been born of God. So in this same book, there's some strong words. The reason I read the passage, though, is this doesn't seem to be the message that's coming from the same teachers that have. I haven't heard the other ones, but this particular teacher who has people spinning around on ropes.
Yeah, yeah.
They seem to teach the opposite of this passage. That it might not matter so much whether you're practicing righteousness or not, as long as you're trying, you're all right.
So, I mean, would you be able to say I would avoid that? That's a false teaching. That's a false teacher.
That's the thing. I don't know why. Maybe there's some biblical reason, but I'm not sure. I have a hard time saying what the implications of these passages is, which is that these are false teachers, that these people have a false spirit and they're deceiving people.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're false prophets. I don't know why I
Well,
have a hard time saying it because it seems to be the obvious thing. It just seems so condemning, and I guess uh, I want to be careful before I condemn another. But it does reek of being false prophets, which would mean these are people who are using words which align themselves with God, right? False prophet. They're using um, images in a sense of God, but they're actually teaching false. And so you have with false prophets, right? The idea is that it's not that they're people that are denying God. It's sadly quite the opposite. It's people that are affirming God and teaching about God. They're just teaching falsely.
So I have a question. We do the little Bible study at our house, Jeff. Like, are are you the teacher? And if so, would you maybe even call yourself a false teacher? Like, if like we were just talking and you said you were reflecting and saying that you weren't really righteous, right? Like there's things you do in your life that you could do a lot better, right? Like you weren't
I don't
doing
recall
bad,
saying
huh?
I don't recall saying any of those things, but
I know you said like because
I
it
don't
was
think
when
I
I
said
was
any of it.
crying. I was crying about everybody and everything and worried about everybody. And
I,
you,
you didn't do that. So you're mixing things up, if I may suggest. Are you talking about? So you were talking about us meeting together, reading the
okay, yeah,
Bible, okay?
yeah. So
And then you drifted off, perhaps I guess, into a time you were crying, which was not when we were meeting together reading the Bible,
no, no,
right?
no. So I just mean okay. So we meet at our house and do Bible study, right?
Okay, yes.
And you're like teaching. Are you a true teacher or are
Um,
you a
I,
false teacher? Are there only those two choices? Which one are you?
well, um, to be clear, we read through the Bible and we talk about it, and
So
everyone's free to speak.
yeah, so you're not a
And
te are
so,
you just maybe not a teacher? Because like let not many become teachers.
yeah, well, just to be clear, it's not like sermonizing. Now, when no one's around, it's just with my children, I do more sermonizing. And every once in a while, I might give my thoughts on things or something I want to share. Um, but I don't know that I've put myself in a position where I would be called a teacher.
Yeah.
Simply, I'm not
Okay.
let
really teaching.
let's let's ask it this way more. Let's use some examples that might hit home a little bit better. So there are people out in the church community that exploit people, right? That use emotional services and they're out for money. And again, I'm not naming names and I'm not pointing at anybody specifically, but would you agree that that exists? That there are people doing that, and more specifically, that they're exploiting people for the very purpose of becoming wealthy.
That those people exist? Yeah, we know those people exist.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I mean, that's again, I'm not asking you to name names or to point fingers, but do those things exist? And if they do, then I would assume that's one way of being able to say, hey, look, when you see these kind of things, it's those are false teachings, right? Yes. I mean,
Yeah, what comes to mind is that guy who had a earpiece and his wife was reading the cards of the prayer cards that people had dropped off, and he was professing to be a prophet and knowing things about people, but his wife was really just reading information to him from the prayer cards at the beginning of the church, or that were deposited at the beginning of church. And so obviously these people, charlatans, I guess, or whatever, right? These people exist, and they're clearly false prophets. So on the extremes, we know those people exist for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that those things have been exposed, so we know they do exist. There is the aspect of, people that are not quite as obvious, right? But they're still doing those same kinds of things. Would you agree? I
That's
mean,
where it gets
that's where it gets a little tricky,
interesting.
right?
That's
Yeah.
where it gets interesting is if somebody's a little better at their tricks, um, how would you ever know?
Well, I'm wondering if passages like the one you read in John give us clues to those things and testing the spirit. I mean, if we're looking, at that passage for guidance and asking what does that really mean, right? That would that would be a good question as far as I'm concerned. And again, it's just simply a question based upon what you read. And, it sounded like from that passage that testing the spirits was an important thing because there are many false prophets that have gone out.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, it does give you some tests you can do, but the thing I find interesting is it seems like someone could read these and just say these things, but it says, every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God, and every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming and is now already in the world. So by this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is of God. So the problem I have is I can't help but wonder if he's talking to them. Is this a letter to somebody about something that they're dealing with?
Something specific to that community at the time, right? Putting it in its context.
Yeah, because so it doesn't say it, but supposing for a moment that there's somebody there that's denying that Jesus Christ came in the flesh, and that's the false teaching he's speaking against, then this passage would be saying, that right there is your evidence these people are not true teachers.
Yeah.
Um, versus the inevitable consequence of this being written down is that a false teacher could read that and say, look, I'm saying Jesus Christ has come in the flesh.
Right, because that would be pretty easy to do based on that passage, right? I mean, you could, for instance, um, again, in the evangelical community, if you are attending church regularly and you're having discussions, if you get into apologetics, you will ultimately find out that, um, you're going to come across in your study of apologetics and study of your faith, you're going to come across material and things that would suggest that certain churches are false prophets, that certain teachers are false, or excuse me, certain churches are teaching false things, and certain individuals are false prophets. And they give you statements and quotes and all kinds of good stuff and things where they, what they call, quote, twist the scriptures, things like that, right? I mean, you and I have gone through the end time stuff, and we've both been labeled heretics and been called, false teachers and things like that by different people, or suggested that we're believing false teaching. So those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about.
Yeah, and therefore, similarly, I would be a false teacher in certain people's eyes.
So
Right.
is there a difference between being a false teacher and just having something wrong in your understanding? How much falseness do you need to get the label false teacher?
Well,
Because wouldn't
I
every
mean,
human teacher have some type of deficiency, maybe, and in their understanding of something? And
well, do you think though that there are people intentionally misleading
Yeah, so
people?
maybe that's the idea. Maybe that's what. Well, I don't know, but like false teacher.
I mean, but
Yeah,
but
like there's like this intentionality to it.
do you think
That
though
would
that
make
exists?
sense.
Do you think that exists? Do you think that there are people out there though that are intentionally misleading people? That's the question.
Well, of course, I think there's people who would use religion to mislead people. And you could say when someone's financially benefiting that there's that motive. And also, I mean, people are weird. Like I hear these stories when people talk about their own motivations, and like some people just like to lie. Like they like to mislead people. Um they get it, they like the attention even. So for sure that could be, I could see why someone would use that cloak of religion to get those things, whether it's money or attention or respect or
Right,
whatever.
right.
But yeah, but still, I guess like I hesitate to label people specifically.
Well,
Although, although yeah, like I said, I still judge a lot, and
we
at the very least, I'm really concerned. Like to bring up the aerialist, it's really a concern. Like I'd hope that wouldn't be what um what a Bible believing church would promote.
what about a lot of times religion, politics kind of cross paths, right? They go hand in hand a lot of times. Um, tonight I didn't watch it. I saw a couple small clips, but well, actually, one small clip. Did you hear that bell? You hear that timer?
Is that
Um,
is that our do we have, is that like our 10th listener or something?
yeah, if you chime in, if you make a comment, that's what happens. But so we did presidential address, and I'm kind of going through, scrolling through headlines, looking at comments, things like that, and it seems like there's a lot of those accusations that you see flying around. That the president's being deceitful, and he's being hateful and racist and those kinds of things. Would you we, what do you think about that in light of what we're talking about, and finding it difficult to kind of label people, but there's an awful lot of that just flies around. You just simply observe what's going on the internet and in certain communities and in news pages and in their comment section. There's a lot of that happening. What are your thoughts?
Jeff, you want to take that one and knock it out of the park?
I wanted to comment that I bet there's some legal definitions to all this, as in, or just definitionally, there is the idea of lying, is when you know what you're saying is false, but you're saying it anyhow. And then, of course, there's the other category we're referring to, which is that you simply believe what it is you're saying is true, and you're stating what you believe to be true, but you are yourself deceived or misinformed,
Right,
or
right.
something like that. And I would guess that legally there's some sort of definition, or there's a place where that even comes up, because those are two different places to be. And so then you get into something that you probably can never answer, and that is what's going on inside of a person's head. Unless you can trap somebody, or you can get some really interesting way of finding out what their actual thoughts are, it's really hard to know whether somebody's lying, as in intentionally deceiving you, right? knowing that they have something that's not true, but they're saying it anyways, versus somebody just simply being um, deceived. So let's talk about that church with the arrow list again. Perhaps those pastors are truly genuinely believing that this is the best way to be Christian, is to get the most people in the room by all means necessary, even if we're brushing right up against what might be in some ways looking like a pole dancer. I don't know if I characterize it the same way you guys were, but I definitely know what you're saying. Um, so that person's genuinely believing that they are doing good, they're just deceived, versus someone who actually knows that that's in contradiction to what Christianity probably is, but they are, for whatever reason, just trying to keep their, in a sense, business going, keep the people coming in and keep the money coming.
Right.
How would you ever know the difference? I don't know. Now, going to Trump, which is what you were talking about, similarly, is he lying to deceive, and he actually is a mastermind, and he's saying these things to trick people, or is he um, actually believing what he's saying? Or option three, I think, is that sometimes he just kind of buffoons his way around, I think. And I don't want to call him a buffoon because I think that's playing into um, the current media's caricature of who he is. So I'm going to take that back. Not that, but just kind of he does loose kind of talking or conversational speaking. I think in a way that people take a little too serious sometimes.
You mean like what would you characterize as the loose? Like some of the epithets that he says to people?
Most of his demeanor is almost conversational, um, where you're not taking it line by line like someone's doing a proof in a mathematics or writing a thesis paper, but it's more relational, conversational.
So
Um,
so let me read a couple quotes from him. These are a couple of his tweets, which I always kind of find interesting. I find his tweets a little bit fascinating. Um, so he retweeted. Um, well, he retweeted something that somebody had made a meme, and it said "the wall is coming," and it's his face, and it looks like his image, like when he was on like The Apprentice or whatever, and he's just kind of staring, and it says "the wall is coming," and then Chuck Schumer said, "Enough with the memes. Just quit hurting innocent people and reopen the government." So that was a tweet that he had put out. Let me read some of what he actually said. One of his tweets. It says Mexico is paying for the wall.
so there's actually probably a good example. Uh, he's just he's just doing his thing. Like I said, buffooning around, and then Chuck is it Schumer is trying to be all take it all serious, like in a
Right.
sense it's like trains passing in the night.
But do you think is Chuck Schumer, does he really believe that Trump's out there purposely hurting innocent people?
Oh, that's the funny part. He's actually more like he might be more, or maybe he's the liar, right? If that's what you're kind of saying.
Well, no, what I'm saying is Chuck Schumer is essentially saying, he's out there hurting innocent people because the government shut down because of this thing. He's playing games, and innocent people are getting hurt. I mean, is he is he like is he serious about that? I mean, do you think let me ask
I
you
don't take
this.
any
Let
of
me
those people serious because
let me
they're all part of the puzzle. So
Well,
you can't be him who's withholding putting in the money. So he's taking a position which is holding the government up, and then claiming that Trump is the one who's holding the government up. That's all game playing. It's all just silly. Like both
yeah,
of you are holding the government up. You're both taking a
right.
stand, and until
yeah,
somebody tries mercy and lets the thing go through, you're both holding the government up. So that's all just silly.
yeah. And if he really believed that it was all Trump, right, then you would think, oh, that stinks. Like this guy doesn't really have good reasoning skills to realize it's not him, too, right? So he's either manipulating to do, public to
Mm-hmm.
influence the public, or he really believes it, and either
Right.
option isn't a good option.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So that's exactly, how I'm looking at this. I mean, we got this guy. So, Trump puts out this meme, and Schumer makes his comment, and it's like, well, I mean, because I don't know anybody personally other than people that are just retweeting or re, restating what these people are saying. I don't know anybody personally that actually believes Trump is, shutting down the government and hurting innocent people. It seems like a more of a political kind of game, like Jeff said, right? And you too, Dana. So
Hello.
yes, yes. Um, with that said, though, I mean, you know, people in the church, more the discussion that we're talking about early on, you would agree that there probably are people out there purposely deceiving people, um, trying to gain riches and things like that, or whatever their motivation is, so that they are teaching false things and they are purposely
I
deceiving
think we already
people.
agreed this.
What? What? I'm
Either you're
sorry.
breaking up or I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you.
The picnic is falling apart, guys.
No. Is it?
It was a good pick,
Hey, this is a
but I
picnic of
think all the
three.
crumbs are getting eaten up now.
Why why is the picnic falling apart? Why is this a difficult topic?
No, the deep state is applying static to your end, and we couldn't hear you very well. So the deep state is ending the picnic. That's why.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that might be true. That might be true.
But Jeff might be working on something. Whoa.
What?
Yeah, but you were tying it back into the false teachers.
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I think we agreed on it, or we came to an agreement that those things actually do exist. I mean, whether the people motivated behind the pole dancing or the tightrope walking are doing that on purpose and they're misleading people. We weren't saying that, but there are though people out there actually teaching things that are false and purposely deceiving people.
Yes.
Um, would you say that that's more prevalent though than people are teaching the right thing, or do you see the opposite? Or do you see more? There's more good teaching out there than there are false teaching, or do you see more false teaching?
I
Hmm.
I think from what I currently know, that it's rare to hear someone just teach the Bible in a very simple, matter of fact kind of way. So the answer to your question is that I rarely do I hear the Bible seem to be taught in a very simple, matter of fact way.
So I'm guessing in a roundabout way you're saying probably more false teaching.
So again, I don't know what's with my my lack of wanting calling it false teaching, but it sure seems to be false teaching. Sometimes the exact opposite of what the Bible is teaching. Um, I don't know why I don't want to characterize it as false teaching, but
Yeah. No, that's okay. I mean, what would you?
False-ish,
part of me
false-ish teaching,
part of me wants to
maybe.
believe. I guess I want to believe these people are deceived. That they're not actually uh, um, doing it with intent. It's a thought. Maybe I've never had this thought, but maybe in that passage, it doesn't matter whether they are intentional or not. You could call someone a false teacher and say they're a false teacher. They may believe what they're saying is true, but they're still a false teacher.
Maybe one day they could be a good teacher.
So how about that? I actually feel a lot more comfortable now all of a sudden just saying, hey, that's a false teacher. I'm not saying that they're um, deceptive. I'm just saying that what they're saying is false. They might genuinely believe it, but what they're saying isn't true.
Yeah. And maybe, I think, Ron, you were saying what we see more of, or what you think there's more of out there. Um, if it does, to me, seem like there's a lot of false-ish, or I guess, yeah, like wrong teaching out there. Like, I wonder if maybe today, maybe because of the televangelists or whatever, maybe there's just been this different emphasis on what a teacher is supposed to be. Like, I've seen some really good preachers, like, and we've there's one man in particular who I thought, he is a really good preacher. Like, he was just a great speaker. He was, to me, most of his preaching was really good stuff, biblical. And he had some humor, and he could do a moving, good, good stuff, good sermon. But that's kind of like a rare gift. Like, he had maybe a lot of natural gifting, and then probably he put some work into it. But I think that type of really great preaching it doesn't need to be widespread, like that's a hard thing to do, right? Like, that's a hard thing to accomplish. But maybe, I don't know if it's through Bible school or like the televangelists or whatever, but now pastors today think they have to do this amazing job up there, this amazing sermon, and tie things together and have jokes in there too, and get the altar call going at the end. And and then in their attempts to do that, then they have to get really creative. And so just teaching the Bible pretty plainly, or even like I shared, when I went to the church service and he just kind of read the Bible, made some comments, that they think that that's not good enough. So maybe, but that's part of it. Like, there's these standards that are too high. So to meet those standards, then they bring in all sorts of weird teaching.
That church that you went to, how big was it?
Well, we were there at there were some families on vacation. So probably, I mean, my family's 10. So we were probably 1/3 of the group. Well, wait, maybe over one. Probably there were 25 people there.
25 people.
And it was, so maybe for some people, this is just a Bible study. To me, though, that was awesome. That's enough people. It's fine.
Do you see that just from your own observation that people have a hard time going into that setting as opposed to like the mega church kind of thing? Like, so for instance, again, just seeing my vast experience in attending Bible studies of all sorts, and going back to the beginning where you go to a Bible study and they were just simply teaching the Bible, or and that's all that they were really talking about. A lot of times, just again from observation, notice that people attending those types of things are few. Where if you had a group of people where it's more charismatic, you had a little bit of good musicians, things like that, you typically have a bigger crowd, bigger audience. Is that your same observation? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I never really thought about that it might be an intimidating environment because you're not anonymous. Like I already knew some of the people at the service we went to, or meeting we went to. But yeah, if that was like your first time, you would have to say hello, right? It's obvious you would be the newcomer. And if you chose to sing, you could probably hear your own voice, which can be intimidating.
Not if you're
Yeah.
on
Well, I mean,
But yeah, it's not, you're not
Maybe one.
anonymous. It's not an anonymous environment.
it seems like a lot of people prefer the mega church environment. They like the entertainment. Seems like that it's not only a crowd pleaser, but um, it does tend to be, as far as people's preferences in the church, they seem to gravitate towards that. So
Well,
you have options out there. I mean, people have options out there. They could attend a number of different denominations, but there seems to be this, like, that's why they call them mega churches, because they have these huge attendance. But I mean, in these mega churches, there's always this entertainment aspect of it, and on the other side of that coin, right, you have the denominations or the churches that don't have that, and they have smaller attendance. They have smaller churches. I
yeah,
don't know any. I don't know any. I don't know any. Do you know any mega churches that just simply teach the Bible? They don't have. I mean, there might be.
I know one, maybe.
Do you? I mean, do you?
John MacArthur. Does he do any of that stuff?
I don't know. I don't know. I
yeah.
mean,
Be an exception to the rule.
Well, I don't think I've ever heard his pre-sermon time of the church service. But I would be really surprised if he had singing and dancing and things like that. Like, I think he'd have the singing, right? Like the praise singing, but I
yeah, he
can't
would.
imagine he would do a dance routine.
Well,
So,
hold on though. There's a lot that don't do the dance routine but draw large crowds. So I mean, there's a lot in for instance, the Calvary movement that they don't do extravagant like worship services. I mean, they have a band and they're more contemporary Christian songs, but they're not doing extravagant shows, and yet they do draw a pretty good sized crowd. I mean, some of them are 10,000. Lots of them are 10,000 plus. And again, I mean, we're not talking about people walking on tight ropes during worship service. They're very basic, but contemporary worship kind of stuff. But beyond that, you have the Bible studies, but they still seem to draw fairly large crowds, and they're considered mega churches in many cases. I mean, do you feel like there's some entertainment aspect of that there too?
um, I
or
think I like it. I think it's more simple, right? When I think about though the Calvary that's really near us, um, and I visited it before. It's the Chino Hills one. Like, um, I don't know if they rotate pastors, but the main guy, like he does have a really good speaking ability. You know, like he's a good polished
yeah,
pastor.
lots of them are.
So I wonder if maybe that's part of though, even that's like an entertainment, like, or maybe not entertainment, but it seems to provide like a level of, oh, this is official, like this is good, you know, like, um, maybe there's security in the big numbers and that everything really works well, right? He's very pleasing to listen to.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
so a lot of them are very good speakers, and they have, I think, very polished like speaking skills, or very effective communicators, and they,
yeah. So would it all fall apart if they just had a rotation and say, "Hey, um, Jeff Nobody, he's a really good righteous guy. The pastor's busy, so he's just going to read a couple chapters to encourage us today." Like, like, would that be a good element to add? Maybe. What if a church tried as much as possible not to create a show, like to be
Uh-oh.
wary of that, because even like really good speakers can be like a show.
So at CCV, when we attended there was a new pastor that they were trying out, I remember, and he spoke, and it was so boring,
mm-hmm.
and he
Because
didn't
we're
want
used to
to.
being moved, like emotionally moved,
Right.
right?
He disappeared quickly, but I do
Yeah,
remember
and
that they were trying. He was. I can't remember the details, but that he was a new pastor. They were giving him a chance to speak or whatever, and he was new there, but he disappeared quick.
yeah, and like I think at this point in time, I just as long as the teacher, right, or the man giving the sermon isn't saying kooky things, like I'm really cool with, like, you don't have to take me all sorts of places in your message, like just reading the Bible, making comments,
Mm-hmm.
cool. You don't necessarily need to make me cry.
Yeah,
And you know,
yeah.
and it's so, but interestingly or ironically, at the little humble church meeting, I was crying during the worship time or the praise time. I was crying. And just anyway, I guess maybe is that beating a dead horse? Like, I don't think we need a show. I think the basics are really good.
Well, I think you know, I think a lot of people agree with that, but um, I I do see, and again, just from experience, but I do see people not really being into just simply a Bible study. And people tend to kind of shy away from that. They seem more people seem like they like the kind of the show, or they like the dynamic speaker. I think what you said was good. You know, sometimes the speaker can be entertainment because some of these guys are excellent. I mean, they're really good speakers, and you know, their sermons are so well polished, and they are the draw. I've been to many of the churches where, you know, the pastor, the main pastor, who's really good. He might be traveling, right, for a week or two, and he's gone, and the attendance while he's out of town drops because people are. It seems like people are there to kind of see him, support him, or you know, they like that. So I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if it's so much the teacher or the church, you know, or if it's just people in general, right? That want entertainment. They don't want to. just simply sit through a Bible study, right? I mean, there's probably that aspect of it too, right? Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we saw the same thing, and so maybe with with bait and switch, like you can never really switch. You always have to have some type of debate, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but people, I think people in general kind of, you've probably seen that a lot in churches where people gravitate towards the more entertainment aspect of it than they do the Bible study. I've heard many people say, I don't really like the worship service is awesome. Band is awesome. I don't really like the teacher, but I go for the worship. I've heard that many, many times.
Yeah, it's it's a maybe sad but true.
Do you um would you call that a sad state of the church? Would you say that that's a problem, that's an issue, I mean, with the church as a whole, that the church is really seeking entertainment and not.
Yeah, well, like so there's that phrase where like you what is it? You go into the rabbit hole or through the rabbit hole. Um so I keep listening to these sermons by Mr. Brousseau, and I think he's just really really good, and in a lot of ways it's just helping me see the New Testament in different ways, and just trying to read it just for really what it says. And more and more I'm convinced that, like, if you're going to follow Jesus and follow his teachings, they're really really radical, um demanding, counter counter cultural teachings. And they're not like, I wouldn't say they're oppressive, but it's a really like he's teaching crazy things, like love your enemies. And
We disagreed about this.
you did. I'm trying to communicate. It's not oppressive though. I
No,
think it
I,
is.
I think I think
What?
I think that he's teaching simple things, and that we as a culture we live radical lifestyles. We're kind of radical, and so when he comes over and says, "Let's cut out everything, all of it," while that appears radical, it's not so much him being radical. When I think we're just crazy out there, if that makes any sense.
um
Yeah,
Sure. So
like,
do you mean like in terms of like you have this excessive lifestyle?
It's
So
like
then for
driving the
someone to come and
apocalypse
say,
van. Yeah,
uh
when
huh.
you're driving the apocalypse van and Jesus is walking down the sidewalk with his sandals on, he says, "Why don't you get out of that apocalypse van, that crazy big vehicle, and take a walk with me?" And you're like, "That's radical. That's radical to like walk somewhere." And I'm saying, well, it's not. That's not radical. The lifestyle we're living is radical and crazy.
Yeah, sure. But it's definitely like a U-turn if you are to really do that. And I'm seeing things in my own life that are really that don't seem to align well with his teachings. And I was listening to especially thinking about the divorce and remarriage thing, which all the early Christians took his words to mean if you divorce and your your ex-spouse is still alive, that you couldn't marry somebody else because that was adultery. So, I mean, just imagine applying that today. So it's so dramatic. It's dramatic. a different way of life than what's normal. So yeah, I think it's a problem then when I think about what's like normal practice in church, or that there's just this very this big machine, big show, big campuses built up that are supposed to be encouraging all of us to live the way he taught. It seems like a problem. It seems like it's hindering um, like obedience to Christ. It's making things probably harder. And I don't think it's necessary. Like, when I think about Jeff inviting me to church a long time ago, I probably would have gone even if it wasn't boring. Like, I didn't go because he said, oh, we have an amazing band. I mean, I hope I would have kept going. Maybe I wouldn't have kept going. Who knows? Like, who can really know? But I continued to go, like, because people were very kind to me. And I don't know, maybe it's my personality. Maybe I could go, because I wouldn't agree with the pastor, but I could go and listen. And I found it interesting to listen to. I guess it doesn't help to speculate too much. But when you ask about, is it a problem? It does seem like it's a problem. Like, it seems like it, show's over.
Is it?
Oh, maybe something else. But yeah, it does make me concerned. I think we're in, I try to look outside of our time or our culture to, because like back in when they were doing the Spanish Inquisition and things like that, and like the indulgences were being sold by the Catholic Church, that was normal, but hopefully some people were able to see that, like kind of take a step back from their culture and
do you
maybe
think
see it for what it is.
do you think there's opportunity for a more radical separation of these things like you've seen in the past? So like the Protestants, and you know Martin Luther and that whole aspect of people separating from these movements and you know veering off and doing different things because of what's going on in the church and the teaching. And I see people sometimes calling for that kind of thing, like saying, hey, you gotta get away from that teaching, you gotta get away from that organization, you gotta get away from that church and separate yourself from that church. You see any opportunity for that
Or
today?
like question, at least questioning, like seriously questioning, right, those practices. Like I think the internet is amazing and Facebook is amazing. So with those particular, David Berceau YouTube sermons that I'm listening to, and it's making me change some things and change my thinking, and then I see online other people like someone who started this website, someone who is really involved in this, like they're like house churches. Um, they cite these things, like they cite his sermons, they cite some of the same, like maybe like an author that I've read too. So and yeah, what is the result from what I see? It's not like I'm talking with these people in person, but they seem to gravitate towards a more like a house church based model, or just a very really stripped down from definitely no song and dance type thing, and also
No pole dancing.
no pole dancing, and an emphasis on like, hey, let's look at this Sermon on the Mount and take it for what it says more, like not try to explain it away. So that's cool. And like I just think, well, is this is this a growing thing, or is this just something I'm noticing? Because now I'm noticing. Jeff, I think you got to wrap up this picnic though, right?
Hey,
Do you have any words that will just tie it all together
I'm
and
grading
put
right
all the
now.
snacks back in the basket?
I'm double tasking, double tasking.
This could last. I mean, all into the evening. I mean, into the wee hours of the night.
We could do this nonstop for the rest of our life.
If only, Jeff, if only. Oh man, I could dream. You
Well, we
know,
could.
yeah, maybe if we did do the we sell the house, buy some land, live in the school bus, and just podcast all the time.
Like nonstop.
Eat eat grass.
So I will wrap it up for you. Um, the aerial dancing thing, I, I don't know. Like I said, the first time I heard about it was tonight. It is it is kind of interesting. I mean, it's another aspect of the entertainment that you see in the church. Um, I I don't know. I don't know what to say about it because I don't know what the motivation is behind it because it sounded like from what Jeff had brought up that there's actually quite a few churches that do it. So I'm a little bit curious to see if there's some kind of like other common denominator. Is it driven by some kind of denomination or something? I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, that was quite a wrap up.
Oh, wasn't that good?
No, I don't know. I think you have to. I, I didn't
Well,
hear about the border wall tied in.
well, um, the border wall and tying into that, that seems like a bunch of entertainment as well. Seems like it's a big show. I mean, reading reading comments from like Chuck Schumer seems like you know, I don't know. I have a hard time finding anybody that actually believes that stuff. Nobody seems to be too concerned with it. Everybody seems to be thinking that they're all politicians play games. I
Well, if
hear
you
that
want
over and
entertainment, watch their response.
seems like, but I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah. They did the rebuttal right after.
it seems to me like nobody really buys any of it. Seems to me when you talk to people, they're like, it's just politics, just games.
That was amazing.
No, wasn't
Perfect. Why does it say Joshua?
it? Was he on?
Why does it say Joshua on the call? Was he there?